I used to have a friend who worked as a mortician. He told me that he liked the job, but something creepy happened that almost made him reconsider his profession. There was one time he told me that he was working on a body. The body of this particular person had been someone who had been thrown out of a moving vehicle at high speed. The person was in bad shape, limbs torn off, part of their face missing, and it was a really messy job. As he was fixing up the body as best he could, he swore he could hear something. It was almost inaudible and coming from another room. So he got up to check it out. Keep in mind that it was 2 a.m. at this point, and he was the only person working. He started looking around to see where the noise was coming from, but he couldn't find anything. Upon finishing his little inspection, he went back to tend to the body. But when he came back, something was off. There was something strange about the room now, a presence or a feeling that wasn't there before. The entire time he was working on the body, he felt like he was being watched. When he was finished, he finished all the essential paperwork and was readying himself to go home. And just as he was closing up, he looked through the glass window back into one of the rooms, and he swears he saw someone dart from one side of the room to the other. In a panic, he thought someone had broken in, and quickly undid all the locks and did a thorough search. No one was in that room, or any rooms for that matter. The building was completely empty. He was a bit tired. It was about 4 a.m. at this point, so he thought maybe he was just imagining it. So he closed up and went home, and tried not to dwell on it too much. About 2 months later though, he was speaking with a co-worker, and the co-worker was telling him that he really didn't enjoy working last night because he had to close up. He said that something happened that he couldn't explain, and my friend tried to be bold and just came out with, "Did you see someone running across the hallway?" His jaw nearly dropped, and asked how he knew. He said that the same thing happened to him. Apparently, they started talking with a few other people, and it was a common occurrence in that building. Needless to say, they felt very creeped out once it was validated that it wasn't all in their heads. One of my duties at the mortuary I worked for was nighttime body removals. One night, my partner and I showed up at around 2 a.m. to grab the paperwork for our removal. When we got inside, we both got the feeling like there was someone there. So we walked through the building, checking to make sure everything was secure, and closing all the doors. This included the casket room. Everyone hated the casket room. It was freezing cold year-round. The lights were always uncomfortably dim, no matter what maintenance did to try and fix them. And there was this mannequin in the corner in full military dress that just felt wrong. The only people who weren't bothered by the room were the cemetery sales staff, and that's only because they had no souls. So my partner and I don't find anyone, so we lock everything up ahead of time. We get back an hour later, and our new guest logged in, and decide to get a cup of coffee before leaving. He and I walk towards the kitchen, only to find the casket room door open about 3 feet. It's almost pitch black in there, and I can barely make out the red in the mannequin's uniform. It shouldn't be that close to the door. My partner and I froze for a second. Then I grabbed his wrist, and we backed up into the kitchen and straight out the back door. It honestly felt like if we'd have gotten too close to the casket room door, something bad would have happened. Neither of us would ever go near that room again, even during the day. I could spend time alone in the prep room or crematory no problem, so I'm not easily spooked. But there was definitely something wrong in that room. When my dad was in grad school, he worked in a hospital morgue, harvesting skin donations from cadavers. He also worked to prepare bodies and such, but for the most part, he was a skinner. His job was to take visible skin, usually from the back of calves and such, and preserve it for such use upstairs. One day, he was doing said job, and the body he was working on had gone into rigor mortis, with its arms straight out to the side. This made working on the body difficult, so he had another worker help him bend the arm under the body, using the body's weight to hold the arm under. Standard practice from what I was told. Anyway, he walks around to the other side of the body and brushes the bent arm, which subsequently flies out from under the body and slaps him in the chest. He said he screamed, dropped all his tools and ran out of the morgue like he was on fire. He vowed to himself that if stuff like that ever became normal, he would quit. He didn't want to become some creepy guy who enjoyed working in the morgue and laughing at grotesque things. A few months later, he was showing around some new employees, and the same thing happened. He brushed by a body, a limb struck him, and while all the newbies screamed and cried, he just started a little and quit the next day. He also liked to tell us the stories about the worst highway accidents he was around. Some guys were in the back of a pickup truck driving down the highway. Not that uncommon in Indiana, where he was doing grad school. They ended up bouncing out of the bed when the driver ran over something, and they hit the pavement, only to immediately be run over by dozens of cars who had no idea what was going on. They were bringing in wheelbarrows of body parts all day. I used to work patient transport. I got a call to take a body from ICU to the morgue. Nothing crazy. I got to the ICU, and because it was a shift change, a large group of nurses were circled around the nursing station. There were 2 doctors there as well. I went up to the group to say I was ready. That was when I felt an incredible wave of dread. I saw they were creeped out, nurses and doctors alike. One doctor asked, "What was the temperature?" 101.5, replied a nurse. "When did he expire?" "Over 3 hours ago. Family requested additional time." Bodies are usually only allowed to stay 2 hours on the floor before going to the morgue. The whole group with me, trailing, walked to the patient's bedside. The doctor placed his hand on the patient's stomach. The immediate shock that came across his face was terrifying. The patient was burning up. After 3 hours, they should be cold. He said there was no medical explanation. He is an esteemed ICU doctor with years of experience, so I trust him. I took that body down, and while in the elevator I thought of zombies, and I have never been so scared. But while waiting, I knew that I had to touch his stomach, or else I would never forgive myself. I had to be a tangential part of this medical anomaly. Through the pair of gloves, a body bag and 2 sheets, I touched his stomach and felt the heat radiating. I think they did an autopsy, but the conclusion was unclear, or at least that's what they told us. I am glad that I didn't have to deal with that further. The night went on routinely, but it was the talk of the hospital for a long time, and still something that no one can explain.